The relationship between India and Pakistan has long been fraught with tension. The two nuclear-armed neighbors have fought multiple wars since their partition in 1947. Recent events have once again pushed them to the brink of conflict. On May 7, 2025, India launched airstrikes against what it claimed were terrorist camps in Pakistan. This was in response to a deadly attack in Indian-administered Kashmir. The airstrikes caused a sharp decline in the Pakistani stock market. The KSE 100 index plummeted by over 6%. India's financial markets also experienced volatility. These market fluctuations underscore the significant economic stakes involved. The situation remains highly volatile, with both sides deploying troops along their shared border. The international community has expressed grave concerns, urging restraint and dialogue. The specter of a full-blown war between two nuclear-armed nations is a frightening prospect. The possibility of a wider conflict cannot be ignored. It is imperative for both sides to seek diplomatic solutions. The international community must play an active role in mediating the conflict. A war between India and Pakistan would have severe economic repercussions for both countries and the global economy. The costs of military mobilization, engagement, and potential reconstruction would be colossal. India, with its much larger economy, would likely weather the storm better, but the impact would still be significant. Pakistan, on the other hand, with its already fragile economy, would face potentially devastating consequences. The immediate impact would be felt in the financial markets. Both Indian and Pakistani stock markets would likely crash, wiping out billions of dollars in wealth. The Indian rupee and the Pakistani rupee would also depreciate sharply, making imports more expensive and fueling inflation. Foreign investors would flee both countries, further weakening their economies. Trade between the two countries, already limited, would come to a standstill. This would disrupt supply chains and hurt businesses on both sides. India would lose a market for its exports, while Pakistan would face shortages of essential goods. The impact would be felt beyond their borders, as both countries are integrated into global supply chains. The World Bank estimates that a full-scale war between India and Pakistan could cost the global economy trillions of dollars. The conflict would also likely lead to a spike in oil prices, as both countries are located in a strategically important region for global energy supplies. This would hurt consumers worldwide and further dampen economic growth. A war between India and Pakistan would send shockwaves through the global trading system. Both countries are important players in international trade, and a conflict would disrupt supply chains, increase costs, and create uncertainty in the global market. The ripple effects would be felt far beyond their borders. India is a major exporter of pharmaceuticals, information technology services, and agricultural products. Pakistan, while smaller in economic size, is a significant exporter of textiles, leather goods, and sporting equipment. A war would disrupt these exports, leading to shortages and higher prices for consumers around the world. The conflict would also disrupt global shipping lanes. The Arabian Sea, which borders both India and Pakistan, is a vital waterway for international trade. A war would likely lead to the closure of ports and the disruption of shipping routes, further exacerbating supply chain disruptions and increasing costs. The uncertainty caused by the conflict would also weigh heavily on global trade. Businesses thrive on stability and predictability. The possibility of a wider war, particularly one involving nuclear weapons, would create a climate of fear and uncertainty, leading businesses to delay investments and scale back operations. This would further dampen global economic growth. The potential for war between India and Pakistan sends shivers down the spines of global energy markets. The proximity of these nuclear-armed rivals to crucial oil shipping lanes in the Arabian Sea raises the specter of disrupted energy flows and soaring prices. The Strait of Hormuz, a critical choke point, sees 20% of the world's seaborne oil pass through. Any conflict could disrupt tanker traffic and send oil prices skyrocketing. India and Pakistan are major energy consumers, heavily reliant on imports. A war would disrupt these imports, leading to energy shortages and price spikes. This underscores the fragility of the global energy system and the need for diversification. Section 5. Geopolitical shockwaves, alliances, and power dynamics. A war between India and Pakistan would send geopolitical shockwaves across the world, realigning alliances and reshaping the balance of power in the region. It would test the limits of international diplomacy and could potentially draw in global powers, escalating the conflict beyond the Indian subcontinent. The rivalry between India and Pakistan is deeply intertwined with the interests of major global powers. India has strengthened its ties with the United States in recent years, while Pakistan has close relations with China. A war between India and Pakistan could force these global powers to choose sides, escalating the conflict and potentially leading to a wider conflagration. The conflict would also have profound implications for Afghanistan. Pakistan, which shares a porous border with Afghanistan, has long been accused of supporting the Taliban. A war between India and Pakistan could destabilize Afghanistan further, creating a vacuum that terrorist groups could exploit. The international community would face a monumental challenge in containing the fallout from a war between India and Pakistan. The United Nations Security Council, often paralyzed by great power rivalries, would be under intense pressure to act. The conflict would test the limits of global governance and could potentially lead to a new era of international instability. Section 6. The human cost, suffering, and displacement. Beyond the geopolitical chessboard and economic forecasts lies the stark reality of human suffering. A war between India and Pakistan would be a humanitarian catastrophe, resulting in widespread death, injury, and displacement. Millions of civilians would be caught in the crossfire, their lives shattered by the ravages of conflict. The densely populated cities of both countries would be particularly vulnerable to attack. The use of conventional weapons, let alone the unthinkable possibility of nuclear weapons, would result in unimaginable carnage. Hospitals, schools, and other civilian infrastructure would be destroyed, leaving the most vulnerable segments of society exposed and without access to essential services. The conflict would trigger a massive refugee crisis. Millions of people would be forced to flee their homes in search of safety, overwhelming neighboring countries and international aid organizations. The displacement of such a large population would strain resources, exacerbate existing tensions, and create a breeding ground for disease and despair. The psychological trauma inflicted by the conflict would leave an enduring scar on the people of India and Pakistan. The loss of loved ones, the destruction of homes and communities, and the constant fear of violence would have long-lasting consequences for mental health and social cohesion. Section 7. A nuclear shadow, the unthinkable threat. The most terrifying aspect of an India-Pakistan war is nuclear escalation. Both countries possess nuclear weapons, and even a single use would have catastrophic consequences. The unthinkable becomes a chilling possibility. Miscalculation or desperation could lead to a chain of events spiraling out of control. A conventional conflict could escalate into a nuclear exchange, devastating humanity. The immediate impact of a nuclear explosion would be horrific. Hundreds of thousands would be killed instantly by the blast, heat, and radiation. The long-term effects of radiation and environmental contamination would last generations. A nuclear winter could disrupt global climate, leading to famine and ecological collapse. The use of nuclear weapons by India or Pakistan would be an act of self-destruction. It is imperative that both countries recognize the existential threat and take steps to reduce the risk of nuclear use. Reaffirming no first use and engaging in dialogue on nuclear disarmament is crucial. Section 8. The path forward. Diplomacy and de-escalation. The current situation demands urgent action to prevent an all-out war. The path forward lies in diplomacy, de-escalation, and a renewed commitment to dialogue. Both India and Pakistan must prioritize peace over brinkmanship and recognize that the costs of conflict are far too high. The international community has a crucial role to play in facilitating dialogue and mediating the conflict. The United Nations, regional organizations, and individual countries with influence over India and Pakistan must use all diplomatic tools at their disposal to bring both sides to the negotiating table. Dialogue must address the root causes of the conflict, including the disputed territory of Kashmir. A lasting solution requires creativity, flexibility, and a willingness to compromise. Confidence-building measures, such as increased people-to-people contact and economic cooperation, can also help to reduce tensions and build trust. Both India and Pakistan must also take concrete steps to reduce the risk of military escalation. This includes pulling back troops from the border, refraining from provocative rhetoric, and establishing clear channels of communication to prevent misunderstandings and miscalculations. Section 9. Conclusion. Averting catastrophe, embracing peace. The specter of war between India and Pakistan is a stark reminder of the fragility of peace and the devastating consequences of conflict. The potential human, economic, and geopolitical costs are simply too high to contemplate. The only rational path forward is one of dialogue, diplomacy, and a shared commitment to peace. The international community must stand united in its efforts to avert a catastrophe. The world cannot afford another war, especially one involving nuclear-armed states. The time for brinkmanship is over. The time for peace is now. The people of India and Pakistan deserve a future free from fear and violence. They deserve a future where their children can grow up in peace and prosperity. It is up to the leaders of both countries, with the support of the international community, to make that future a reality.